we normally become disabled due to a number of activities like accidents, diseases, drugs. They are nowhere attached to cultural beliefs. So because of that, you go somewhere, then they think in case they come to you, they also become disabled. There is a child who was in a certain school. All our children refused to sit with him, that in case if they sit with him, they also become blind.
That's so inhuman.
And the teachers did a lot to sensitize the children, but they totally refused. You cannot sit with me, moderator, and you also become blind. No.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. So stigmatization is everywhere. Like I told you before, you apply for a certain job, then they start thinking that what will you be able to do, yet you are disabled. And yet, we have done a lot everywhere, in civil societies, in the government.
This is the Policy Digest, a Center for Policy Analysis podcast that explores how African societies are governed and how people and their leaders are shaping the future of their communities. Through candid conversations and insightful analysis, we aim to provide a deeper understanding of the political, economic, and social landscape of Africa. So sit back, relax, and get ready to explore the diverse and dynamic world of African governance.
Welcome to the Policy Digest. This is your home where you hear stories of African leaders that are shaping the future of their communities. And I hope you've been loving the content we've been putting out there about how African leaders, young and old, are taking it to themselves to see to it that their communities develop. In so doing, in this episode, we are doing an episode called Voices of Resilience, the fight for disability rights in Uganda. And in this specific episode, we are joined by Naftali Rumazimisi. Oh yes. And I'm sure you're going to love the kind of work he's doing. But before we do that, I would like to speak to some of the things that he has done, and he's going to add more to that. So Naftali is the executive director of Ubuntu Disabilities Action for Development, which is a non-profit that is seeking to mainstream issues of inclusion and equality for people living with disabilities. Naftali, you're most welcome to the Policy Digest.
Thank you for that brief background, my host. My name is Rumazimisi Naptali, like you've said, a visually impaired person. I was born sighted, and then at the age of 6, I became blind. So since then, I have lived in a world of blindness. So though we are talking together right now, I cannot be able to see you. And I know we are for inside here. And for me, okay, the visually impaired people, we do recognize through voices. And it is only you who introduced yourself.
Okay.
So I would want even others to introduce themselves so that I can be able to know them, because for me I'm blind.
Absolutely. And we're happy to have you here, Naftali. Maybe to start this off, you have done quite a lot of work with regards to inclusion of persons living with disabilities. Could you walk us through the work that you've been doing in advocating for people living with disabilities?
I graduated in 2018 in social work and social administration in Makerere University, and immediately I was blessed and I was given an opportunity to work with the Tahinduka Trust Uganda as the public relations officer and inclusion officer. One of the things I was supposed to do was to advocate for the rights of persons with disabilities within the organization and make sure that they are given reasonable accommodation. after that, I was blessed. I also got to work with the National Union of Disabled Persons of Uganda as a research assistant.
Yeah, that's Nudipu, right?
Yeah, that is Nudipu.
Okay.
And Nudipu is an umbrella organization for all DPOs, Disabled Persons Organization. And what they do is to advocate for a just and a fair society where all persons with disabilities are also included within the mainstream. After there, I also worked with Show Abilities Uganda as a youth leader, and Show Abilities Uganda is an organization, also one of the DPOs of Nudipu, which advocates for the rights of youth with disabilities. So, and we're implementing some projects advocating for the rights of persons with disabilities, doing sensitization, capacity building of youth with disabilities, of course not leaving the children behind. In Central, we had a project in Mpigi, then in North, Moyo, and Sironko. So I've been involved in advocacy activities, advocating for the rights of disabilities. So later, we also sat and thought of forming an organization, and we joined our umbrella organization, DPO and other DPOs, to advocate for the same cause. So for me, I've been involved in advocacy activities, and we thought of this depending on me as Naptali, what I've gone through to achieve what I've achieved, or to reach on the level where I am. For me to go to Makerere, it wasn't easy for me. I don't know why. Most of the persons with disabilities come from families that are poor, humble background families.
And Naptali, I wanted us to still focus on that, maybe like on the third question. But before we can get to that, could you tell me what personal experiences or challenges drove you to become a very passionate advocate for the rights of disabilities, to the extent of starting Ubuntu Disability Action for Development?
That's great. It's a nice question. Me, I'm from Kisoro.
Oh, you're from the land of the gorillas?
Yes, please.
Okay.
So I've been facing different ample activities, and these activities, they only aim at vulnerizing rights of persons with disabilities. What forced me mostly, me from the place where I come from, there is a mother. The mother had, I'm not quite sure of the number, but they were more than 5 children. One was born blind, and this child couldn't be allowed to access the free environment. All the time the child was inside the house, in the bedroom. Whenever they would go somewhere, what they would do would only be locking the child in the house. I was still a student in the secondary. But an uncle to that child knew me. She came to me and said, Naptali, what should we do for this child? The child is 10 years. The child is ever locked inside the house.
Yes, that's very inhuman.
So I said, now what should I do? But because I also knew what I had gone through to access my education, I involved the LCs, the police, and the school, where there is a unit for children with disabilities in Kisoro. The school is called Kisoro Demonstration. And they went there, they arrested the father. This child is now in secondary. More to that.
That's very powerful.
More to that, I have a friend of mine. She's now at the university. The father was paying school fees for them. But when she completed P7, and after passing her PLE, the father said, I cannot pay for you because after all, you are not my child. He said, you are not my child because the person is blind. The mother came to me. I went there. I educated the father. And now the lady is at the university. So, it is a lot. Because of all that, I thought of me and some colleagues of mine. We thought of forming this Ubuntu to join our umbrella organization and other disabled persons organizations, like I said, so that we can advocate for these children, because what we go through is very, very,
and I think that's huge.
And
when I read this word Ubuntu, what drove you to choose such a powerful name?
Yeah, thank you for appreciating the name. We chose to use because the word Ubuntu it is a Rufumbira word, and in English it means grace. So for me, what made me to choose this powerful name is maybe I don't know. I also have grace and maybe empathy for these persons with disabilities, because I'm also blind. I know what they go through, and I am a victim. So that's what forced me to.
You must know their pain deeply.
Yes, I know. You know, moderator, I don't know whether you have ever been hungry, but if you stay on an empty stomach, you know, and me, I get food, I eat, and then tomorrow you come and say, Naptali, I slept on an empty stomach. I may say, oh, sorry, please, what and what, but it is you who knows what you went through. So I know what you go through, because I have also gone through the same, and I'm still going through the same.
And I think that's very vital motivation, because lived experiences are very authentic in determining how much passion someone invests in the advocacy that they do. But maybe just to ahead to something. So Article 35 of the Uganda's constitution guarantees the rights and dignity of persons with disabilities. And we see in 2020, we had the Persons with Disabilities Act that came into force to ensure that these rights are respected. In your view, how effective has this act been in addressing the real-life challenges faced by people living with disabilities?
For me, I may say, if I'm to grade, I may give it 10%, and 90% is still missing. Because
that's an F9. You're giving an F9 to government.
Yes, because like the Article 35, it guarantees persons with disabilities the right to employment, the right to health. But if I'm to use it, I may say it is not effective. You go to the hospitals, there are no the beds they are using, they are not favorable to women with disabilities. Moderator, a woman moving in a wheelchair, and the bed is taller than this microphone here. How would that person be able to climb there?
Yeah, imagine that, right?
Yes. You go to employment, whether in private or in government. Like for me, myself, there was an advert, but I will not mention the district. There was an advert. I also applied, but unfortunately, the so-called the human resource officer said, how can we employ this blind person? If someone brings him a paper, written in print, how will he be able to read it? I was denied an opportunity. And I'm not the only one. we apply somewhere with able-bodied people. You go to the shortlist, you not knowing that you're a person with disability. You are a person with visual impairment. The mere looking at you before knowing what is within you, they say, for you first go aside. How, if we employ you, will you be able to do this? Just judging someone through the book cover. And yet we have all it takes to compete with able-bodied people.
That's true.
So, all of this forced us to put in place Ubuntu.
Well, and I think that's good because someone has to do the fighting, right? Someone has to fill that gap. And maybe just to ask just one more question before we get to a break, before we get to the second segment. Research has shown that households with a member who has a disability face significantly higher expenses, spending more than 39% more than other households. Similarly, families with children with disabilities spend 31% more on education. How do you think government and society can better support these families to alleviate the financial burdens that come thereof?
I think what they should do, like private society organizations, there are those that also advocate for the rights of persons with disabilities. So what they should do is forcing the government to put in place policies that are favorable to families who have these children with disabilities. You know, like now, there is a program that the government has of special grant. This special grant is normally given to persons with disabilities and to some parents who have children with disabilities. But it is also not enough. Because
how much is it?
They normally give, it depends, but the high amount they are given is 5 million.
That's per year?
No, it is not per year.
When because the government feels
it is normally there every year. It is normally there every year, but it is applied for. So if you apply for it this year, I don't know why. Next year you will not apply. They will give
another person. How many receive the grant, let's say, on every disbursement, every financial year?
No, even that money you are given, I said the high amount you are given is 5 million. It is not given to only one person. It is given to a group. So you form a group of 10 to 15. 10 to 15, and you are given that money, so that money is distributed amongst you. So if you are 15 moderator and you are given 5 million, assume it is given, because sometimes you apply and you are not given.
That's less than 500,000 every person, right?
So if you have, I know a parent who have all his children have disabilities, and this parent has to educate these children, and the person is a peasant, so really give him 500,000. Is it enough?
I don't think it is enough. And in the next segment, I wanted us to get into the barriers that people living with disabilities face, especially in one critical part of the sector, which is education, which, according to Nelson Mandela, is the only pathway through which the son of a peasant can be the president, the son of an ordinary person can make something out of their life. We shall be dealing with how the right to education for a person living with disabilities has been compromised in the next segment. Stay tuned.
You are listening to the Policy Digest, a Center for Policy Analysis podcast that explores how African societies are governed and how people and their leaders are shaping the future of their communities.
Naptali, young persons with disabilities face lower levels of educational attainment, which significantly reduces their chance of securing employment, and secondly, decent employment. With only a third of young men and women with disabilities currently employed, how do you think government or education institutions or employers can create more inclusive opportunities to bridge this gap and ensure equitable access to employment?
First of all, what they should do, like Act 2020, it advocates for reasonable accommodation. So, even these organizations that employ persons with disabilities, or that would want to employ persons with disabilities, as well as the government, should make sure that persons with disabilities are given reasonable accommodation, areas that favor them to do their roles. Because you cannot employ a person with visual impairment and he or she is given a computer without JAWS. JAWS is job access with speech. And this is a speech sensitizer that helps the persons with visual impairment to navigate around computer. In other words, it makes us to also fit technologically, because these days we are digital. So this is a software that also enables us to be able to navigate around the computer and be able to do our roles. Then there are areas that are not favorable to persons with the physical impairment. These are persons who move in wheelchairs. So if you are employing such a person, make sure that really he or she is able to access the working place through putting ramps and even making sure that the areas of parking are favorable. Then they should also make sure that we have access to information. Because, information is power. And you cannot give me, like me, a person with a visual impairment, you cannot give me a print book and you think I will be able to read if I'm not given if they are not put into my formats, like audios
in your language, yes.
Yeah, or audios or braille, and ORS. But we advocating for independence. So I was going to say personal assistant. Personal assistant here is also very, very important, but we need independence. We would need personal assistance maybe in helping us navigate around the environment only. But if I'm an officer somewhere and you want me to reproduce up to my ability, then give me what is access to me.
Oh, and I think that's quite a good angle to it. And I think technology has been very vital.
Very, very
but
important.
I think also in the broader scheme of things, persons living with disabilities face these kinds of discrimination because of stigma. The social cultural factors that prevent people from wanting to include persons living with disabilities in workspaces, in employment, in education. What are some of these factors that lead to this stigma, and what has Ubuntu done to deal with these social cultural factors?
It is quite absurd. We face stigma, we face discrimination actually almost everywhere, in employment, in education, in health. And, there are communities that really believe that being a person with a disability is a curse, which is not true. We normally become disabled due to a number of activities like accidents, diseases, drugs. They are nowhere attached to cultural beliefs. So because of that, you go somewhere, they think in case they come to you, they also become disabled. There is a child who was in a certain school. All our children refused to sit with him, that in case if they sit with him, they also become blind.
That's so inhuman.
And the teachers did a lot to sensitize the children, but they totally refused. You cannot sit with me, moderator, and you also become blind. No.
Absolutely not.
Yeah. So stigmatization is everywhere. Like I told you before, you apply for a certain job, then they start thinking that what will you be able to do, yet you are disabled. And yet, we have done a lot everywhere, in civil societies, in the government, and we do actually even defeat the able-bodied people. So, I would really request these organizations and the communities that really believe that being disabled is a curse. It is not a curse. Moderator, we all find ourselves the way we are. No one makes an application to God to become blind, to become disabled. These are accidental. So, really, it is not a curse. It's not a curse. So we need to do more sensitization.
Yeah, we need to, and I think Dipu and Ubuntu have been doing a lot in those sensitizations. Could you try and tell us what sensitization campaigns you have been running to deal with these factors that are contributing to the stigma?
Yeah, Dipu has a lot, and of course we're also doing. We move through schools, sensitizing the pupils and the students with disabilities about persons with disabilities, children with disabilities, educating them that becoming disabled is not a curse, and they should really work together. And actually, what I've seen, most of the children with disabilities are brilliant.
Yeah, they're very brilliant.
Yeah.
Because they have a brain, and the brain is what thinks, really.
Yes. So we usually move through schools requesting this. There is a word they normally say normal. As if for us, we are abnormal. The normal children to,
And we must stop the use of such language, right? Because it is what encourages discrimination.
It is not good. So we move requesting them, encouraging them to socialize with them, to discuss with them, and they are really doing it. We even move to different organizations, requesting them to employ persons with disabilities, educating them on how to work with the persons with disabilities, and even sensitizing the communities about what being a person with disability
and
is.
I think you make a very good point. A language can be used to disempower people. What specific language do you normally discourage people from using to the language that leads to stigma against PWDs?
There are languages that are not really good. And most especially when it comes to vernacular, it is really worse. I may use a word here. It is in Rufumira. They say impumnyi. Impumnyi means someone who is totally, who can't have. I even don't know the right word to use. It is a really bad word. So we move to different communities, churches, schools.
To just speak about that language, and we need to have this conversation. I think even in Rochiga there must be words which the people use them, but those words are disempowering to PWDs.
For sure. So we are not impomni. We are not impomni because we have our abilities. We are able to do everything. We compete favorably and even defeat them. So these languages really, there is a way they discourage.
That's
And
true.
when it comes to, when you use such language to someone who is not empowered enough, someone who has not moved, someone who is not exposed, and he or she is disabled,
their esteem-
really you will be taking him backward.
That's true. And you mentioned something, for example, calling you abnormal. No, you are normal. You just have you're just in that situation which you didn't find yourself in. And I think we need to challenge part of this language. And recently, a friend of mine leads a cause called the Worthy Cause Initiative, and they were doing an outreach to an orphanage which specializes with people who have disabilities. And they told me that part of the stigma is encouraged by parents. You find a parent gives birth to a child and drops them, maybe on the road, or just drops them at an orphanage and disappears for years. Do you think parents have a contribution to this? And how is Ubuntu trying to change the minds of these critical stakeholders?
Moderator, sometimes what I think we shouldn't blame these parents, because they do it because of lack of information.
Oh, yes.
So they need to be educated, they need to be sensitized. So for me, I would encourage and even request civil societies that advocate for persons with disabilities and some funding agencies to come on board to join us, and we advocate for these children with disabilities, because we are all human and we are all able.
And I think that's very, very, very vital in terms of ensuring that we change their minds. And I know that the work that Ubuntu has been doing, you are doing it without any form of support. You are just doing out of your own passion, right?
Yeah.
And I know you're an NGO and you're looking for support to ensure that you can reach more parents, you can reach more communities. Do you have any word you need to maybe say that can enable people to appreciate the problem bigger and maybe give you a bit more support in that direction?
These days, the world is advocating for an inclusive community, leaving no one behind.
Oh, yes, the SDGs.
Yes, SDGs.
Sustainable Development Goals.
Yeah, and really, sometimes we are left behind because of, like I said, because of lack of information. And the information is power. If we have funding, we can be able to educate these parents who have children with disabilities, and not even parents with children who have children with disabilities, the communities advocating for the mainstream, a world of everyone. So really, I would really beg the funding agencies to come on board and fund us, because we have done all this through struggles. Sometimes we are even invited to go and give some sensitization activities to schools or to some organizations, and we are limited by funding.
That's true.
Because currently we have been sensitizing, we have been moving through schools, and even to some organizations that invite us, because they are those that have already known the importance of Ubuntu and what it is doing in the community, and they are appreciating. So sometimes they invite us to go and give them some education about persons with disabilities, and we do it. So I request the government and the other organizations to come on board and really help us advocate for our rights.
And our prayer is that you get those resources, because I think you're doing very important work. So as we end, do you have any one word you want to tell that person who has been discouraged by that language, to those employers who are discriminating against PWDs? Do you have that one word as we close?
I would want to encourage most such a persons who have been discouraged really, because by the way, you see, there is a slogan that says nothing for us without us. So it is up to ourselves to champion our rights because if we don't wake up, if we don't move, if we don't talk, these organizations, these communities, they will never know what we're able to do. So it is up to us to wake up and show what is within us and show our abilities. Because if I'm given an activity and I do it favorably, then that's when they will appreciate. And I know if I do it, you cannot do 100%, but if I do it up to my ability, then I don't think I will be not given a chance next time. So it is up to us to wake up and champion our cause.
Thank you
and
so
our
much.
rights
Thank you so
persons with
much.
disabilities.
Indeed. We must wake up and fight for ourselves.
Yes.
Nothing for us
Without
without
us.
us. Thank you. And Naftali Rumazimisi, thank you so much for joining us on this episode of the Policy Digest, where we are looking at voices of resilience that are fighting for the rights of those that are forgotten. Their spirits are still firm against even the oppression that we've talked about. To you, dear viewer, I hope that this has inspired you to look forward to a world where no one is left behind, where no one is discriminated for things that they did not choose, where we can fight for a more equitable and just world. Please find our content on your favorite podcasting sites. That could be Samsung, Boomplay, YouTube, Podbean, anywhere you find us. Policy Digest, whether you are walking home or whether you are driving home on that evening, on that morning, make this your go-to podcast. Till we see you next time, my name remains Joseph Tahinduka.
Thank you for listening to the Policy Digest, a Center for Policy Analysis podcast that explores how African societies are governed and how people and their leaders are shaping the future of their communities. For more podcasts, check out our Podbean and YouTube platforms. Thank you.